just want to discuss a few things. I'm not an expert, but I've been reading a few things about the airspace in Africa and the potential and different plans that have been made for the airspace. What um, what caused my interest in this topic is that I recently read an article, and I put the link in the description. But I recently read an article about African airspace, and the article was just exploring the reasons why global African stars do not tour Africa. Um, there is an irony in the fact that like the big four Afrobeat stars tour Europe, tour America, and bring Africa to the world. However, when it comes to touring on the African continent, there is, there's a lot, there's a lot to be desired. So it caused me to think about general aviation in the African on the African continent, and it just made me realize how actually expensive it is to travel within states, within countries in Africa, and it also led me to look into why things have been set up that way. And an interesting information that I came across is the fact that this was to discourage interconnecting flights within the continent of Africa, and it was also to support colonists removing resources such as gold and minerals from the African continent to Europe. Um, this is very sad when I consider it. It also makes sense as to why, unless it's neighboring countries, Africans don't really travel to neighboring states, and made me consider perhaps it also made me consider the division that's quite apparent um, within countries in Africa, and this might actually, this might actually be part of that. The fact that we don't travel from state to state. I also looked into African airspace, into the aviation world, and it's actually an emerging economy. There's lots of investment that plans to be made into Africa's airspace. Um, Whether or not it will profit African countries is something that I'm yet to discover, but it will make people a lot of money. In the light of the instability happening in Iran and flights being cancelled, holidays being cancelled, also due to rising fuel costs. An option has been African airspace. Airlines are quickly realizing that they need to diversify in the flights that they offer. Um, I believe there's a conference next year in Abu Dhabi in regards to the interconnecting aviation flights to be offered within Euro, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. And so originally, I believe it was due to take place in 2026, September, I believe, but due to different things happening all over the world, due to things happening in the Middle East, it's now been postponed to 2027. And I believe that this conference is just to forge further ties between the Middle East, Africa, and Euro Asia. It's quite interesting because, due to costs, I would say lots. I can only speak for Ghanaians, but I would say lots of Ghanaians travel to the Middle East, to India, to China, um, Dubai, obviously, and the Western world may start to feel left out. Um, There's also a lot of money to be made in Africa's airspace. I believe flights. I believe. I believe there would be at least. I mean, check the figures, but I believe there would be at least 5 million seats per country minimum. You know, and due to the weather, the general weather, it wouldn't be so much seasonal. Obviously, in Europe and in other countries, you have them travel to warm countries during their winters. But yeah, it's interesting. Also, we have the ECOWAS, ECOWAS, which is an agreement within some countries of free travel up to 3 months, I believe. I believe Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso have left the ECOWAS, but I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, so it's a good time for Africa to consider the value of our airspace, because I predict in the years to come, bigger airlines will definitely invest in flights connecting African countries to other African countries, and there's a lot of potential there. Um, Also, as well, I do understand why global Afrobeat stars may not have plans to do an African tour. It could be due to security, it could be due to adequate facilities, it could be due to insurance, it could be due to lots of things. So I do understand why global African stars do not necessarily have an African tour pending. And when I say African global stars, your Burna Boys, Wizkid, Tyler, and maybe I'm behind the times. Maybe they have done the African tour and I'm not aware of it. So correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, the soaring prices of airline tickets within the continent of Africa is quite disheartening. But like I said, when I looked into it, hello at Z Dixon W6S. Hi. Yeah, but when I looked into it, apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, um, this was due to the colonists wanting to make it easier to from African countries, and discouraging resources being shared from country to country. So, but African airspace is a really, really valuable thing. I also think that I Show Speed and other streamers like himself have done a lot, not just streamers, but just people in general online. But definitely, I Show Speed is a big part of that. I feel like it's also because I Show Speed has shown the potential of into Africa flights, into Africa holidaying, and maybe not necessarily holidaying, but probably airlines have now realized that, yeah, there are Africans that need to travel for, if not holidays, then to see family or to attend events or to buy resources for their businesses. Um, like I said, I know plenty of Ghanaians that travel to India, to the Middle East, to China, to neighboring African states. This is not anything new, but I do believe that due to the instability in Iran and everything else alongside that, it's forced airlines to diversify and look at different options, because I believe that routes that were disrupted didn't really affect Africa, or Africa just um, were flexible enough to adapt to any new flight paths. But yeah, so what my concern is that Africa's airspace, which is really valuable um, and has immense potential, I feel like if we're not if we're not what's the word if we're not attentive enough, we could end up being exploited for our airspace, not just for commercial flights, but also military. You know, it's a very strategic location. Like I said, lots of potential. Um, and yeah, those are my concerns. And yeah, so African airspace is largely untapped at the moment, but there's a massive, massive, massive potential. And I believe that airlines will start investing, especially as they see commercial flights being cancelled due to um, petrol fuel prices and just the disruption in the Middle East due to everything that's gone on. So I do feel that airlines will definitely tap into Africa's airspace. But again, I just really, really want to encourage Africans in positions of leadership, in positions of influence, in positions of just discourse about Africa's future is to be really be mindful that we are not exploited to the just that we're not exploited for our airspace. Like I said, like I keep saying, it is very valuable. It's massively untapped, and it has great potential. And I think there's a definitely an advantage to sometimes being late to the party because you can build on others' mistakes, you can learn from others' errors, you can have the latest technology, the latest systems in place. And so I think when it comes to, and there used to be Ghana Airways, there's not anymore, but definitely if Ethiopia Airlines, Kenya Airlines, just just to mention Ethiopia Airlines, long may they continue. But what I will say is that when it comes to our airspace, we need to be mindful